What's poppin', fam? Welcome to Don't Touch My Mindset, a podcast that is designed to uplift, inspire, and motivate you, and most importantly, share tools to help you protect that mindset. Season 5, we are back. Hello. Welcome. I'm your host, Jay Chase. Thank you so much for rocking with me. Yo, guys, if you missed the announcement that I really didn't make, but it has been 2 years since we started Don't Touch My Mindset. October 6th of 2021 was when we kicked off our first episode, Kill the Bear. And I just wanted to say thank you, guys. We are now 30,000 plus downloads deep. This year we were ranked the number one mindset podcast to follow in 2023. Over 100 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts. Thank you. You guys are getting up there on Spotify too. So thank you. We have launched an app. We have the Don't Touch My Mindset app that is in Apple app stores right now. Like, we've just done so many things, and I just want to say thank you to all of you who have rated, reviewed, shared the show with your friends, shared the show with your family, your loved ones, anybody who benefits from it. Yo, my homie hit me up and he was like, bruh, I'm so mad at myself. And I was like, wow, what's up, family? And he goes, because I just now listened to the show for the first time, and this is what I've been missing. Yo, I'm pouring into the world. I'm trying to help. So if you would, it always helps the show grow. Please rate, review, or share with a friend. Yo, today's going to be a little different. I want to bring you a little something special, and it's a Pivotal Moments episode, just because I haven't had one in 4 weeks, right? So we're going to open this mindset up with a Pivotal Moments episode. It is explicit. I think this might be one of the few explicit episodes that I actually have on the podcast. So just want to give you that fair warning. Listeners advisory. It is an explicit episode. Just a little bit, not really a lot. So I'm gonna let you be the judge of that. I love you guys. Thank you so much for rocking with me. And we're back with another mindset. Here is Pivotal Moments. We're going across the pond. Across the pond. I feel like I always have to ask for permission to record, because like when we come into these containers, like and share knowledge, share wisdom, share anecdotal experience, I feel like this is extremely valuable, right? You could probably sell this for top dollar. I'm kidding, guys. Welcome back to another Pivotal Moments. I'm your host, Jay Chase. I'm sitting here with a phenomenal guest all the way across the pond. Is that how we say it? Across the pond, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I want to introduce you guys to a powerful personal branding coach, a high performance coach as well. Hannah Power, will you please tell everybody what you do, who you are, where you're from?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. I always feel very privileged to come on podcast and have the opportunity to share ideas and thoughts. So yeah, thank you very much for having me. As you said, my name is Hannah Power, and I live in the UK, just south of London. And I have worked as a personal brand and performance coach for the last 5 years, run my business Amplify, which is really all about working with coaches, leaders, founders, consultants, anybody who really feels that they have a message that they want to bring to the world, and help them to take that message from the ideas in their head and the passion, the potential they know they have, and put that through a process to help them to kind of build that out the other side, whether that's going to be a book or a program or whatever that might be. A song. Recently, my client wrote a song about her message once we kind of got it through the process. And alongside this kind of journey of working with people on their personal brands for the last 5 years, and this real mission that, you know, to fill the world of social media with better and more leaders, right? I think social media is an amazing opportunity, as well as having its downsides, which we all know exist. It's an amazing opportunity to positively influence, you know, other people's lives as well as your own lives through really your unique skills and passions and story. And throughout doing that over the last 5 years, I really identified people that were really living and working in flow, who were finding this personal brand thing very easy, and then people that were out of flow and finding this personal brand thing very difficult. And I really set about trying to understand what was it that put people in flow and what was it that put people out of flow, so that I could try and help everybody to achieve the personal brand success and to bring their message to the world. Because we live in a society of, high performers, right? We have the top 1% who can easily get up and have a cold shower and sit down and do deep work and do this and raise $1 million, whatever, and do this stuff. But we also have a group of people who have a real potential and real passion, but they just might not naturally have those kind of performance abilities. And those are the people that I take the real interest in, the people that aren't naturally the high performers, but they have all the stuff to be there. They just don't necessarily have the focus or the self-belief or whatever. And that's why I really created this flow framework, which sits alongside the personal brand framework, as really a philosophy, a methodology to help us all to be and live in our best state, but whatever that means for us.
Wow. Well, one, I can say that you're doing amazing work for individuals who are out there in that pocket of not really reaching their potential, but needing to be unlocked. And I'm so happy that you're here on the show with me so we can dive into that. I want to start off and ask you one question. Why do you lead, right? What sparked that interest or that purpose or that calling within you for you to take an active leadership role in your life?
Yeah, I think it's such a good question. I find leadership a really interesting concept because I think it can be quite a burden if you are somebody who is a natural leader. Like sometimes I have wished to not be somebody who wants to lead and just have a gentler and easier role, right? By being a follower. And I don't mean that in a negative way, to be a follower, right? I think it's not always easy, right? To be someone who leads. I've always been a natural leader. That's always been challenging. However, I think if you are a natural leader, but I always try to kind of push that side of me down. When I was younger and stuff, I think people occasionally would find that I was too much for them. And in the UK, I think it's a slightly different culture than in the US, but it's called tall poppy syndrome, right? Where you raise above other people, the poppies basically want to pull you back down. And when I was younger, I went through that quite a lot. And I really tried to push my kind of leadership and desire to kind of, bring people forward down. And I went through a very kind of more traditional path and going down that kind of entrepreneurial, let's do this vibe. And then I went through some adversity, which I'm sure we'll talk about later on in the podcast around the kind of pivotal moments thing, concept. And I really just had this wake up moment. I think, I really find it fascinating how we have these wake up moments when we go through adversity. And I went through this extreme adversity, this, very kind of near death experience, or a couple of them actually, which really changed the way I looked at the world. And I really felt that I found meaning through being able to lead and help other people to lead their lives in a different way. And I think that was actually what really pulled me through some of the darker times in my life, was really kind of leaning into that side of leadership. And I think now I lead to, I guess, it sounds cheesy, I guess, but to make the world, a slightly better place. I think I don't have massive fame and massive influence, but if I can put one thing out each day that can change one person's perspective in that one moment, right? That's amazing. And that's kind of how I see it now. I used to be very I need to be famous and have millions of followers and all this stuff, that very ego driven. And now I've kind of let go of a lot of that. And now I'm if I can just positively influence one person in one direction based off my experience, then that's great and that's enough. And the more people that can do that, the more that we can shift our world to operating at a higher vibration. Because I think we've got this kind of battle going on at the moment as humans. You've got this pull on this side of, be the best version that you can. And then we've got this pull on the other side of, this dopamine and addiction and darker side of the world. And, this fear-based media in this world that we live in. And I think if I could just be a part of the solution on this side and pulling people slightly more forward, I think that's why I lead.
That's beautiful. I think that's an amazing reason to lead, right? Similar to why I lead. I just want to leave any situation just a tad bit better than I found it. So that's absolutely beautiful. I love that question, and I absolutely love your answer. Take us back to before you were leading, before the personal brand, before the high performance coaching. Take us back to, let's say, that pivotal moment that helped you shift your perspective. What was that pivotal moment like? What were you like before that? What happened?
Yeah, so go back to, I guess, sort of like 2016, and to be honest, I was like on actually quite a good trajectory. It was just a very different trajectory to what I was doing now. I was working at a corporate consulting firm in London, and I was like, doing the corporate thing and kind of, building up the ladder in that way. And alongside that, I was running my blog, which kind of looks so old school compared to the way the internet looks now. But I was running a blog, and it was all about, it had no niche. It was so broad. And I was just kind of, looking to be the best version of myself, but I was definitely struggling with, being pulled into the kind of the pleasures of life, right? Of drinking and all of that sort of stuff. And I was very driven. I think it was quite materialistic. I was driven by a lot of those kinds of things that we have in society. And I would say I was pretty much like in the system that we kind of operate in. And on the 18th of March, when I was on holiday, I went on holiday to visit some friends who were on a ski season in France. It wasn't a glamorous ski season. They were really living in this not particularly fancy apartment. And skiing isn't really my thing. It's not my flow. I like going to ski places and eating cheese and all of that, but I'm not really a skier. And I was a little bit out of like my comfort zone there. And there was one night that we went out, and everyone was kind of doing a lot of there's a lot of going on out there. And I ended up getting like quite drunk, and I left the night out. I wanted to go home. And on the way home, I was taken from the side of the road by these guys that said they could help me find my place where I was staying. And I was raped by this guy who was driving this car. And I remember the moment, I guess, like when you say pivotal moments, like there's a lot of different pivotal moments that I've had in my life, and I have a very good memory, so I remember them very well. But I remember getting into this car and thinking they were taking me to my friend's place, and starting to drive out and out of the town, and past the kind of the sign of the town, and I realized what was happening, and I thought, these guys, they're going to kill me, right? That's what this is about. That was what went to my head, and I just started to beg for my life. And I was 23 years old, and you don't know how to beg for your life, right? In that situation, you've seen these things on the movies, on TV shows. You don't ever imagine you're going to be in that situation. I remember really talking about my family and talking about my mom, and really saying like, you can't do this to my mom. It wasn't even about don't do this to me. It was like, don't do this to my mom. And I remember arriving down to this river, and I just remember this dark, it was like 2:00 in the morning, this dark river, and the crunch of the gravel as we got down there. And I had this almost like this visualization. I think it was like the fear combined with the alcohol of my like dead body floating down this river, and feeling like that had like already happened. It was like, and I still can see that now, and I almost feel like, that was like a part of me that kind of like, floated down this river. And then I have this other visualization of this voice, this like higher version of what I now kind of see as myself, but at the time I felt was maybe like, I don't know, like a family member. I had some family members that have died, and that they were talking to me that kind of said like, this is okay, you're gonna survive. And then I kind of went through this rape and fought it off a lot as I could, but there's only so much you can do as a young girl. And eventually they drove back up, dropped me off, and I walked in the snow with no shoes on for like 20-30 minutes to just find humans. And then eventually I was found by this really nice lady, and went to hospital and went through that process. And I joined in that day, on that on that 18th of March, and I always know that date every year, I joined this club that you don't choose to be a part of, but you are then a part of this world of people that have been raped, and you experience what it's like to exist in a society, particularly in France. The UK wasn't much better, who do not treat people who've been, I don't know if you've seen much about this like situation going on in the media in the UK with Russell Brand, but the media and the world doesn't really know how to handle rape. It's always about the perpetrator. It's not about the person that's actually gone through it. The French didn't even believe me. You English girls, you come here, you do this, and blaming me. And after that, I won't go through the whole story of it, but eventually I was diagnosed with PTSD, and I started to drink really heavily. And I really started to like lose myself through that period of time of who I was and what I was about. And I was just, really going through a lot of pain. PTSD is a complex mental illness, which I think you can only really understand if you've experienced it, because it sort of kind of sounds like you're crazy otherwise. And eventually I was in such a dark place, and I was like, I just don't want to live like this anymore. So I ended up quitting my job, moving out of my place, and I moved over to Bali. And I was like, I'm going to go to Bali, and I'm just going to be really zen, and I'm going to go to yoga, and I'm just going to be this like fixed person who's healed, right? Because that's what everyone goes to Bali for. I lived in Bali for over a year. I didn't complete a yoga class because I could not sit still. People always go when you're going through trauma, like go to yoga, go to therapy. It's like when you're in that like mindset, meditate. Like you can't. It's not that easy to just sit there and stretch. So my drinking and everything followed me through in Bali, and then I had this bad accident where I broke my shoulder. I ended up in hospital for a week, absolutely pumped full of like oxycodone and all the kind of morphine stuff, because they can just pump you full of this stuff, right? And I ended up having to leave Bali, and I'm nearly at the other pivotal moment, leave Bali and go to Singapore to collect my new visa. And when I was over in Singapore, I was staying at a family friend's house, but they were away. And I realized that the medication I'd been given, which was oxycodone, right, which I'd never heard of, but I know is a big thing in the US. It's a big thing, isn't it? This oxy kind of pandemic. Because of all the boxes all the pots had the wrong labels on them. I had taken too much of the oxy, thinking that oxy was my antibiotic. So I'd taken 6 times the amount of the oxy that I was supposed to. So I was supposed to take 1 a day or whatever, and I'd taken 6 a day.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was basically now in Singapore, ran out of oxy, and then went through with a broken shoulder in a country I didn't know, with no one I knew there, going through an oxy withdrawal, which you only have to watch like the shows to know. And like I used to drink, but I never did drugs, so I didn't really know what a come down felt like. Like I didn't know a lot about that. And I went through this this kind of 48 hours of like, if someone had said like, do you want me to shoot you in the head, like I'd have been like, do it, like just take me out of this. Like it was awful. I remember ringing my brother, who I thought was the best person to ring in my family, and be like, I'm not going to make it through this. Like, I'm really sorry. Like, I was really ashamed, and I really, I just didn't think I was going to make it through it. And he talked me through it, and eventually I came round from it. And when I came round from it, I think that's that moment, people talk about where you hit like rock bottom, which I think is very, similar to like the concept of a pivotal moment, because it's not always a beautiful, shiny moment. Sometimes it's the lowest moment. And I came round from that, and that's when I really knew. I was 25 years old, and I thought, this is not the way I want to live my life. And I quit drinking, as there's kind of a long story with this, and went through a really big period of healing. And about 6 months after that, I went to these pyramids in Bali. It's called the Pyramids of Chi. Have you ever heard of them?
No, I haven't. Tell us about
They're these like sound healing pyramids. I didn't know a lot about sound healing and vibration and all of these things, but I lay in these pyramids, and I had this really crazy out of body experience where me now, I was me at that point, 2 years on from the girl who'd been raped in the car 2 years before, 3 years before, was back in that scene. And it was me over the shoulder of myself saying everything's going to be okay. And then me and the car then walked over to the water and collected the me from the water, right? And like the three of us were reunited. Yeah. And it was like this crazy moment of, it felt so real, right? And I came round from it, and I knew, like, in that moment that I was healed. Like, I was healed from that trauma that I had moved through. And from that moment on, I've never been affected by that trauma again, because, you know, I was able to go into the darkness of it and the pain of it and release it and heal from it. And after I healed from that and I came round from that, I just felt like I wanted to dedicate my life to, I guess, helping people to heal and transform and move through pain. And then by doing that, create lives which helped other people to do that. And I think that's why I kind of ended up moving into personal branding. And the coaching work that I do now is very much about, you know, moving through these kind of lower vibrational experiences that we go through so that we can live in like that higher vibration. And I'd love to say like it's been smooth sailing since then. It hasn't. I've had other challenges to go through. And I think it's always really important to share that, because I think sometimes when you are a coach or someone online, you kind of share like, I was here, then now I'm here, and look at me, I'm fucking perfect. And I think it's really dangerous and a really negative message to give, because it gives people a view that life can be perfect. And I just don't think that's the truth. Life will always be light and dark. To live in flow is to embrace that life will always be full of light and dark. And the more that we can accept and live in that state of, you know, being present and enjoying the beautiful moments and having that gratitude, but also being able to go through the darker times in life and be okay to accept that those are real and that they happen. That's very important, that message. So there's a few pivotal moments in there, but that's my story.
Wow. One, thank you for being so open with that and bringing the rawness to real. Like, that's what we're here for. And one, to know, like, a lot of people look at these people, these influencers, a lot of coaches and people of influence online, and like you said, they don't talk about much of the process in the darkness, right? And that pivotal moment is like you said, very side by side to a rock bottom, right? And I couldn't imagine, you know, going through what you went through and throughout that, and being able to have the strength to go back to that and take an active leadership role in your life and heal through that, but also help others heal along this process. Tell me, what do you think about the forgiveness process? Is there any forgiveness throughout that? Who's the forgiveness for? What does that look like? How did you embrace coming to this place of not holding a grudge, right?
I think forgiveness, you know, like, I really went deep into such a state of like existential crisis. Like, I was in Bali on my own. I remember there was this guy living with us. His name was Joe. And he used to get back from like surfing, and I'd be waiting. He was a good guy to talk to, and he'd be like, what do you think the meaning of life is? Like, I was so trying to understand the world and trying to understand how can we move through bad things, because bad things happen to everyone, right? Like, no one is exempt from bad things happening. And when you see the darkness of life, which a lot of people have seen, and a lot more people than you know have seen. You know, I've had people, for example, tell me that they've been raped and they haven't even told their partner or their mum, but they're telling me because I've been open about my experience, and because there's a lot of shame and there's a lot of, you know, like, fear around these things. And when I was really studying and really reading a lot about this stuff, I came across this concept of forgiveness. I remember this guy in Bali telling me that you have to forgive the rapist. And I remember thinking, like, fuck you. Like, you're a fucking man, doesn't know anything. Like, you don't get it. Like, you can't do that. You can't forgive, right? And I wasn't even interested in that concept. And I think we so often live in such a state of logic, right? We're trying to understand, trying to logic. And that was what, when I was in these magic pyramids, which everyone should go to, if they're ever in Bali. When you're in that state, you move out of logic, right? And you're moving into that state of like feeling and emotion. And when I came through that, and I was really crying throughout this. Well, I was out of it. When I woke up, I had wet tears and wet, this thing on my eyes was wet. When I came out of it, I just felt so filled with like love, this state of love. And I had gone through the forgiveness process, I think, through reconnecting with love. And I knew in that moment that I had forgiven that man and those men, because there were 3 men. I knew I had forgiven them for what they did. In fact, I felt sorry for them, because I knew that I was healed from this, that I would move forward from this, that I had love in my life. And I just felt like, first of all, they're never going to be able to forget my screams. They're never going to be able to unhear that. But also, what has happened in their life that is something that they want to do? Like, what pain have they gone through? Because we're not born evil, right? A baby is not born evil. And evil is something we learn and we collect in this crazy kind of life that we experience. And I felt sad for them. I felt sorry for them. I forgive them. And to be honest, I still do. I wish them peace, and I wish them light, because I don't believe humans are inherently bad. I feel that that's something that we pick up, that we learn through our own experiences. And I have had a very lucky, privileged life in a lot of ways. I've had a lot of challenges and adversity in other ways, but I was born with I have a lot of love in my life. And those men obviously don't. And the only way I think to move forward is to forgive them, and then also to forgive yourself. I think, shame is the lowest vibrational emotion. Have you studied like the David Hawkins scale of like emotional frequency? Have you seen that? Yeah. And, shame is this lowest vibrational emotion. It's below grief, it's below fear, below guilt. It's right at the bottom is when you feel shame. And like, you can feel shame for getting addicted to alcohol. You can feel shame for being raped. And only way you can get through that is to forgive yourself for that. And I think the process of forgiveness is about cutting ties it enables you to cut ties to something that's happened to you, and enables you to be free. And I think ultimately, like, all we all really want is to be free. And we're told that's about financial freedom and location freedom, but it's about being free on your inside. It's an internal freedom that we're seeking, I believe, because you could be the richest person on the greatest plane, going to the best whatever, and if you don't feel good, right? Life's an experience of how you feel, then you have nothing. And I think if we can learn to let go and have that process of forgiveness, and a lot of people write letters and all of those things. I think I actually never did that. I've done a lot of journaling and letter writing before, forgiving boyfriends for cheating on me or whatever. But honestly, in that moment, I just felt love and forgiveness and real sadness for the fact that someone, could do that.
Yeah. And I think that's what it takes in order to move forward, not get over or push down, but actually feel and move forward and embrace who you are throughout this process. So that's absolutely amazing. I'm glad that you were able to drop that knowledge on forgiveness. I feel the same way. Shame's do work. I talk about shame all the time, just with my story and what I've done, and the things of what I've overcame and forgiven myself for, and others around me, right? So let me move to this place of leadership and failure, right? As we're healing, as we're getting through this, as we're coming to a brighter light, how are you able to move forward with gentleness and kindness? For you, is building a business, moving through shame, guilt, wanting to help other people? How are you able to move with gentleness and kindness while navigating the emotions of shame, guilt, grief, loneliness, throughout this process?
I think in our modern society, it's really not the easiest thing to do. I mean, I've only lived in this society, so maybe in other societies as well, But I think self-compassion and self-love is something that you can. I think that's what we are at our core, right? We are love. All of these other things are things that we collect and pick up and learn, and that we pick up along the way. But at our core, like, I do believe, like, we are love, right? We are light. And I think therapy is something which helped me a lot. I've had a lot of therapy during recovering from that experience, but also more recently recovering from damaged, failed relationships and challenges in business, and kind of a real kind of connection between my self-worth and my success. I got a little bit hooked on that. I think for me it's about accepting that we're all human, and this life is really about learning, and we all come at it from different angles, and we come at it with different stuff that we have to move through and heal. So I think it's about reminding ourselves that we are human, and having practices as well, conscious practices of journaling, gratitude, positive affirmations. I think a lot of that is required in this day and age to keep us on the straight and narrow. And then when you do find something that comes up, having the courage to look at it and go into it. And I think that's what we struggle with the most, is when we see some fear or some insecurity or something in a leadership setting, right? We want to kind of hide away from it or blame someone else for it and not take personal responsibility for it. But if we make everything in our lives our fault, we actually have power over them. Whereas if we say it's not our fault, then we have no power to change them. So I think it's like a combination of really having a philosophy of courage, of personal responsibility, of that self-love and that self-compassion. And I think it's about surrounding yourself with people who really lift you up and make you feel good, and not being around people who don't, because we have energy givers and energy drainers. And I think that for me, and always leading with empathy and always leading with vulnerability. And I sometimes think, like, I share very openly online, I share very openly in interviews. I believe only the truth is what is real. So if I sat on this podcast, right, and I was like, oh, my pivotal moment was when I made this much money, or when I did this, because I was trying to get people on this podcast to work with me as a coach to make more money, right? Maybe I'd be richer, maybe I'd be more like successful. But for me, like, I don't know, I think the truth and vulnerability and being real is so what is needed in this society. And I always just want to lead from that place, and have that balance of being inspirational through the strength of sharing vulnerability, and not being afraid of pain and bad things happening, because we can't avoid them. And the more we try to avoid them, the more we try to control things, the harder we make our lives. But when we can surrender and just live in that state of, like, right now, like this moment, like, what a privilege to be interviewed by you. Like, you're on the other side of the world. We never would have met. We're having this great conversation in our warm houses. Right now things are great. We could get off this call, fucking chaos could hit. You know what I mean? Who knows? But I think learning to live in that present moment and to embrace truth, I really think that's, for me, how I have always led and will always lead. And that's such an important value for me.
That's good. I like that. I think that's the most important value when it comes to leadership. A coward will say, is it safe? A people pleaser will say, is it popular? And a conscious leader will always ask, is it right? And they lead from a place of morals and values, right? And so I don't think leadership is any type of title. I don't think leadership is any type of dynamic in a relationship, whether somebody's over them, right? And then I definitely don't think leadership is any type of production. I left 6 figures to come be a coach. Like I was in sales, making six figures year after year after year. So it's never about money. Leadership to me is about people development and what I can do for others and be of service, right? And add that type of value to people. And that's what I do in my practice with helping people manage destructive emotions and habits so they can lead effective and full lives. And just hearing you say that, leading with empathy, that's the biggest part, guys. It's not about wearing somebody else's shoes. It's not about walking a mile in their shoes. It's about putting them on and seeing if the shoe fits. Just seeing if the shoe fits. That's all it's about. And if you can say, no, this shoe doesn't fit me, but I can see where you're coming from, you're right. That's good leadership and taking an active leadership in your role, active leadership role in your life. I just feel like I had to highlight that for the listeners because that was really, really good.
Yeah.
That's really good. Let me ask you, when it comes down to titles, successes, trials, tribulations, failures, whatever that may be, take them all away. Why are you here and who are you?
I don't know. I think we can get really caught up with trying to understand why we're here. I think that search for like purpose can be never ending. Why am I here? Well, biologically, I'm here because I can procreate and put another person into the world or another few people into the world. And hopefully, though, that next generation will have a better life, right, than I've had. And I feel like I've had a great life. Why am I here from a more like philosophical or bigger picture? I don't know. I feel like my purpose, I've always felt, is to inspire people to have the courage to be themselves, to step into their light, to take risks, to not be afraid of things. I've always like wanted to like with my like younger nieces and nephews. They're not my nieces and nephews, they're my cousin's kids, but we're very close, so we're niece and nephews. I've always thought like I would like to like be embarrassing so that they don't think that those things are embarrassing for themselves. Do you know what I mean? So that they don't grow up with that fear and with that thing. I think for me, I would love to create a world with just a bit more freedom. I think that's an internal freedom, not a fear of what people think or an obsession with success, or I just feel like we're all chasing something, and I don't think that thing exists. I don't think it does. I feel like I've searched for that. I've always been, I've struggled with addiction my whole life. I can, now I understand addiction more. Addiction being the disease of more. That's really what addiction is, whatever that is, whether that's drugs or alcohol or sex or shopping or just entertainment or stuff, right? It's like all success or business or money. It's just the pursuit, the obsession with more. And I think I've searched, I've hunted for what this more is. And I think that really all that there is to have the best experience of life that you can have in each present moment. And that doesn't mean like always having fun, but being and kind of succumbing to the pleasure, which I think is where I kind of have gone before, is thinking the pleasure moment is more like YOLO. It's not really. It's about having the gratitude, about being the best version of yourself, making yourself helping yourself to be that 1% better every day. And I think just to bring more love into the world, more love, more freedom. And I think that's really all at a level. I think that's what we're all like trying to do. If you put every coach and every person, every motivational speaker, every manifestation this and person who's on social media, like you take it down to like the bare level, like everyone's pretty much trying to do the same thing, just with their own different wrapper. And that's what I find fascinating, is all of those different wrappers, right? That's the brand, right? That's the message, that's the story. That's why I find personal branding so fulfilling and exciting, because that everyone's got their own different way of doing that thing, of just trying to help humans to live better, freer, happier, calmer lives. And I think that's what I'm here to do, is to be a part of that movement, which I think we are in a movement of that now. And I think sometimes it can feel that we're not, because there's a lot of other stuff going on, but I think there is a movement going on of that. And I love to be a part of that movement in any way that I can be.
Oh, wow. That's good. That's good. I love that. Two things, rapid fire, two things that you suggest, to your number one suggestions to help set people free.
I think get really clear on what you really want, what you think you really want, what your goals are. Get so focused on what that is, and then question the shit out of it and understand what it is that you want from that. I remember my therapist saying to me, what is it that you want? And I listed up all these things. I want to have this house, I want to have this business. And she said, how do you want to feel? I thought, what do you mean, how do I want to feel? She said, well, do you want to feel like how you do now when you have all that stuff? And I was like, no, I do not. She said, well, Hannah, life is an experience of how you feel. So how do you want to feel? I said, I want to feel peaceful. I want to feel calm. And she said, well, can you not find a way to experience those things now? And I think that we put so much of our happiness outside of ourselves. Like when I buy this, there's a new iPhone. When I weigh this, when I have this much, whatever, we think then we'll be happy, then we'll be happy. And I think if we can question what is it that we're trying those things to create for us, why is it that we want those things, and what is the feeling that we're trying to create from that? Is that self-worth? Is that confidence? Is that other people's, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, I can't think of the word, but other people's opinions, other people's being impressed by us. Like, what is that thing? And if that thing is not like something which actually at the end of the day is really positive, then it's coming from ego, right? And then that's just the ego is a complicated beast, and you can think you've surrendered to ego, and then you surrender more and you surrender more. And I've been on a huge ego surrender. And I think that really comes from questioning what is it that you want and why is it that you want it? And then really making sure that that is the thing that you want. I think it's crucial to have a North Star. I think it's very important to have desire and have a vision of where you're going. But I just think a lot of the time we have that wrong. But we don't know that because we're so attached to that. And the second thing I think would be to really audit and understand your habits. If that's your vision and that's your end goal, what are you doing each day? Now, I am not someone that's like, my kind of performance coaching is not about like, oh, I'm gonna get up at 5, I'm gonna have a cold shower, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna shove this up my ass, like all of that stuff. Like I think that can work. I also think it's very, very extreme. I think we have this extreme way of like performance, but I think if you can audit your habits and really look at, on a balance, are you doing more positive things than negative things? So, and start to tip the scale more gradually, that makes it more sustainable. So if you think, actually, I need a little bit more discipline in my life, rather than trying to go to an extreme level of what I call the achiever mode, which is, I'm going to wake up at this time, I'm going to do a million things, but say, actually, I'm going to wake up, I'm going to have a glass of water, right? I'm going to go to bed half an hour earlier, and start to tweak the way that you approach your habits and approach your life. It makes it more sustainable rather than extreme, because extreme is harder to sustain unless you are naturally somebody who can just perform at that level, right? You're a natural high performer, which some people are, right? Some people can just say, I'm gonna do this every day, I'm gonna go to gym 6 days a week, but not everyone is like that. And then we create this gap between people that are in this 1% and then everybody else, and everyone else feels like a failure. It's not true. They just haven't found what works for them. So I think auditing your habits, and then I talk about winning the battle. So if you can one time a day win a battle between the dopamine, the pleasure, and the good. So like, and I don't mean the good as in like you have to be good all the time. What I mean is like, if you're somebody who naturally does succumb to more kind of like dopaminic pleasure-based habits, if you can, so for example, you open the cupboard and you see, I don't know, Nutella, and you think, I'm gonna have a spoonful of Nutella, but instead in that moment you say, actually, I'm gonna have some grapes, you've won the battle. And try and win one battle a day, and then gradually you tweak your habits. And that's how I see it. Like, and then you gamify, right, winning that battle. And I think that's a really great way to move yourself more into flow, is to get clear on what your vision is, make that a positive vision of what you want to do and what that flow is for you, and then make those small tweaks in the present moment. And I think then you can gradually bring those things together.
Yeah, there's your formula to freedom, guys. Like, listen, play that back. Wow, that's so good. It's so in alignment with clarity, habits, turn it in, and values, operating in that place. That's
Yeah,
of course. That's really good.
I think values is very important. I think we do a lot of stuff we live lives outside of our values because we don't know what our values are. And like values are so important to leadership, isn't it? And I think that stuff was all buzzwords and crap, but actually if you're living out of alignment with your values, like you're never going to be in that like state of like flow and moving through that positive. No way.
Not at all.
I think it's really important.
I couldn't agree more. I teach on values, and I always say your behaviors are your values on display. So you can say that you value one thing, and you can, and then you're doing something else. You don't value what you say you value. You value what your behaviors are displaying. I do a lot with external and internal behaviors, and when it comes down to it, it comes down to a place of value, whether that's traditional, whether that's economical, whether that's creative or aesthetic, and things like that. We do a lot with the DISC assessment in my coaching and consulting practice, and so we allow people to get very in touch with themselves, which is so important. Let me ask you, what are your top 3 values?
For me, it would be courage, freedom. God, I've got 5 top values, so I have to think about what would be the top 3. Courage, freedom, and this word, which I don't connect with this word, but I connect with what it means, which is stewardship, which is leaving things a little bit better off than when you found them.
I like that. Tell me why don't you connect with stewardship? I like the word stewardship. I don't think there's enough good stewards in the world, actually.
I don't know. I came across this word when I was working. I worked at Barclays and did an internship there when I was like 20. And that was one of their values. And I remember really liking that value of like, I'm going to leave this thing a little bit better off, whether that's going to be a person or any job that I'm in, I'm just going to leave it a little bit better off. But I always found I didn't feel that the word represented the meaning of what the word was, but I've never found a better word. So I've always kept stewardship because I like that concept of like leaving things just a little bit better off, whatever that is. But but maybe I should change my connection to that word. And I love what you said about, your behaviors are your values on display. I've not heard that before, but I think that's really true. And I also think that's a very tough pill to swallow, because sometimes you can think, right, when you're in this, what I call dreamer mode, which is where you're talking about what you're going to do or who you are, but you're not actually behaving as it. And I think it can be very hard to hear things like that, because it's like, if you're in that state of like dreamer mode, you're in that state of denial, it's like, that's not true, or are you trying to convince yourself, right? But it's so true, right? If you're not behaving in alignment with your values, you're living out of alignment to that. But I think it can be really hard to admit that. I'm sure you see that a lot in your like coaching. We have a lot of denial in our society, and I really that's the courage piece for me, is living outside of denial. Denial is a really powerful survival instinct that we have, because obviously we have to be like, that lion probably isn't going to eat me, when it easily could. Do you know what I mean? Like, a lot of our like things that hold us back now are some things that once kept us alive. And I think denial is a really difficult one, because we can really live in that like denial state. And I think that's a really great sentence to get people to question that. So I love that. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the first thing that I always ask people when I go into companies, when I work with executives. I do executive coaching, and I work with individuals in active recovery, and I help them manage destructive emotions and habits. And what did Gandhi say? Our thoughts become our words, it comes all the way down to values, from behaviors, habits to value, morals, to our destiny. And so when I'm really looking at that, and somebody will tell me, well, I value family, cool. Tell me 2 behaviors that back up that value, right? And they're like, well, after work, I come straight home to my family. Cool. What time do you get off work? Well, if it's a longer day, it's 7 p.m., it's 8 p.m. Well, it sounds like you value work over family. I'm not saying that you do, but your behaviors are saying that, because if you value family, you would have a time to spend more time with your family than you did work. And so for me, I value growth, connection, and integrity. I'm not changing up for anybody anywhere I go. I'm always going to look for a way to connect and add value, and I'm pushing myself and everybody around me for growth. We need to move forward versus hang on to the past. Like you said, cut those ties, right? So I teach a lot on values, and that's just something that I hold very, very dear to my heart, just with my story and where I've been, and then the listeners know that. But this has been absolutely phenomenal. Like you showed up with so much power, no pun intended, right? You showed up with so much power, authenticity, realness. stewardship. I think you honestly left this podcast a little bit better than you found it, you know, with your story, adding your perspective to it. So and let me shameless plug, please tell everybody where to find you, what you got going on, how to work with you, please.
I honestly think the easiest way is to go to hannahpower.com. That is my website with all of my info, or follow me on Instagram at hannahpower if you want to learn more about flow and how we can kind of be more in flow in our lives. But yeah, hannahpower.com, you can get all of it there. But Instagram is the best place to. I've gone on and off with Instagram, but I actually really love Instagram now. So yeah, that's my place.
Yeah, I'm right there. I have a love-hate relationship with Instagram too. But you know what? I keep coming back to it. As I have two more questions for you. Very, 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 very fun questions. Number one, if you were a pizza topping, what kind of pizza topping would you be?
Do you know what a Fiorentina is?
I don't.
So it's like spinach, parmesan, black olives with a soft egg in the middle. It's my favorite pizza. So I would be that one.
Say less. I love it.
It's really good. You need to have one.
Hey, you know what? I'm gonna try it. You said Florentine?
Fiorentina. F-I-R, like Fiorentina. I don't know how you spell it, so I'm not even going to try, but Fiorentina. Spinach, black olives, parmesan, soft egg. I tell you why that's me, because it's kind of like half good for you and half naughty. And I'm 50% good and 50% naughty. And I would say that's what it is. Got a bit of spinach, olives are good for you, egg, protein, good. But then it's got the cheese, it's got all that, like the extra parmesan and all of that. So yeah, I would say Fiorentina.
That sounds like you. Like this conversation has been up, down, a little good, a little not, you know, and I absolutely love that. I absolutely love that. If I had to offer you the phrase, "Don't touch my mindset," what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Wow. To be honest, I like my mindset to be touched, because I always think there's the opportunity to learn more and grow and develop. So touch it. Give me whatever you think is, touch away.
I love it. You know, you get so many different responses from that, and I always say I'm focused on growth. Follow one course until successful. Don't touch my mindset. That's what we're here for, and I love that. But you have to be willing and open to grow within that process. Growth is my number one value. Number one. Over connection, yeah. You know, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say because your mindset, you want to change that, because you can be so limited. Just because you developed a good mindset once doesn't mean that there isn't a lot of stuff in there that's holding you back. I think that's the danger of personal development, right? You go on one course, you read one book, you feel motivated because you've gone to listen to whoever, and then you're like, this is my mindset. But actually, we can get very fixated and focus on not always the right things. I agree about focus, of course, and having a vision and not giving up and all of that stuff. But I think we should always be willing to accept that our mindset can be holding us back, and that we can think. Sometimes the most clear and don't touch my mindset people are often the ones that need the most growth and the most help, because they can have massive ego and stuff. So I get the premise of what you're saying, but when I hear it, I'm like, no, touch, massage.
And that's the beauty behind it, right? Because if we allow the wrong people, the wrong influences in there, it's going to take us off course of action. Let's say we're on a road trip, you and I are in a car, and we're headed to a certain place that's going to take us to the next level. We know exactly where we're going to go. We're on this GPS hit all the way from where we are to where we're supposed to go. I wouldn't want anybody to touch that route. And that's just, and like I said, that's one way of looking at it. And then but being open for growth, I'm open to stop.
Yeah.
I'm open to take a pit stop. I'm able to do this, but I can't allow somebody to get me off course because of their negativity, what they've put in the world, how they think, or anything like that. Whatever they got, keep that over there.
I see.
You know what I mean? But
Yeah, I see that.
you
Yeah.
know, and that's why I always like to say that. But when I get in the room with growth-minded, like-minded people, I'm like, yo, touch, massage, let's go. Like we got two
Yeah.
mindsets that don't need to be touched, and now we can grow even more and do more, right? I believe that there's a small percentage of people who want personal development. There's a small percentage of people who are actively healing in their lives. And when we get to a place of actively healing in our lives, I don't think this process ever ends. I will argue or debate what anybody who says that they're healed. I'm like, there's no way. There's no way. We're still healing from something that happened yesterday, right? And whether however that feels in our emotions, but I definitely think that the power of two and growing and growth is so much better than just doing one or being stagnant and where you are. So, I want the listeners to write that down. This is your homework for listening to the podcast, right? We offer the phrase, don't touch my mindset. What comes up for you? What does that look like? And if you set a course of action for personal development or to be better or to be, like Hannah said, 1% better, right? What do you need to do to set boundaries around yourself to achieve that? Hannah, thank you for being here today. Thank you. Anything else you want to say to the listeners?
No, I've loved this. I love your questions, and I love the concept of what you're doing. I think it's amazing, and I love it. So yeah, thank you everyone who've made it this far for listening, and yeah, thank you so much, Jay, for having me. I've loved it.